hearing is going too, but your eyesight is going. It's wonderful to be here in this city with Star Trek fans from all over the Midwestern area. It seems to me, this is my very first Star Trek convention in the year 2024. So I'm glad it's starting out at one of my most charming cities here. My last convention last year was where was that? That was in October in Brad, where was I? What did he say?
He's not listening to you.
Oh, he's not listening to me. Grand Rapids, Michigan. Grand Rapids, Michigan, not too far from here. If you're an Angelina in Southern California. And then I did a concert, Aaron Copland's Lincoln Chronicles in Cincinnati. And then we celebrated Christmas. So this is my first convention this year, and I am so deeply, profoundly grateful to Star Trek fans for a very special reason. I wrote a book about my childhood imprisonment in American prison camps called They Called Us Enemy. It's been a bestseller, and it came out in 2019. But shortly after that, my book was banned in York, Pennsylvania, of all places. Outrageous. This is a book about American history, which really happened, and I can vouch for it because I was a 5-year-old child when the soldiers came to our home on Garnet Street in Los Angeles, a 2-bedroom home, and my father had come into the bedroom that I shared with my brother, Henry, and dressed us hurriedly, and he said, "Wait in the living room, your mother and I are going to be doing some last-minute packing in their bedroom." And so we was roaming around in the living room, and there's nothing to do. So we were at the front window, just gazing out at the neighborhood, when suddenly we saw 2 soldiers marching up our driveway. They carried rifles with shiny bayonets on them. They stomped up the front porch and with their fists began banging on the door. Henry and I were petrified to see this going on right in front of us. My father came rushing out from the bedroom, answered the door, and one of the soldiers pointed his bayonet at our father. We were just frozen in terror. My father got 10 minutes from him, and he went back to the bedroom and finished their packing. He came out with 2 huge suitcases that he was carrying, and he also had little boxes, 2 little boxes tied with twine in his arms, and he gave me one of them and Henry the other, and we followed him out onto the driveway, and we stood there waiting for our mother to come out, and she came out shortly, ushered by the other soldier. She had our baby sister, a baby, an infant, in her left arm, and a huge duffel bag in the other, and tears were streaming down her cheeks. I will never forget that terrifying morning. And I wrote a book about it, as a graphic memoir. People talk about graphic novels, but I call it a graphic memoir because it's my memory of what happened to me as a child from 5 to 8.5 years old. And it became a bestseller when it first came out in 2019. But my editor called me to tell me that the book was banned in York, Pennsylvania. I thought of York as a nice place, a college town, but somebody, he told me, a man and a woman went to their library board and shouted and screamed that this book is making children feel bad. Feel bad. They can imagine how I felt. But the book, the board was very, I guess, easily intimidated because they shouted and yelled very loudly, I'm told, and they banned it. But when the book first came out, Star Trek fans, as they're wont to do, immediately went out to their bookstores and bought the book. And they got together and went down to the school board. And they, not yelling and screaming, but rationally and with passion, said, this is what happened in America, and this is trying to prevent things like that from happening again. And they said they've gone to Star Trek conventions and they've heard George talk about it, and this is a true story. And people who don't like it are the people with the problems. People that like that, the ones that make those events happen. And the board changed its mind again, and they put it back on. But I was so proud. That's why I say I love Star Trek fans. They speak up when speaking up needs to be done. I believe, because of that childhood experience, I speak up when there's something that's not right, that's not American being done. And Star Trek fans are principled people who speak out. And so I said, it's the Star Trek fans that are going to make America and democracy a good and strong and true, vibrant part of our country. So thank you all very much. I am going to sit down. And because of that, I wrote another book. As a matter of fact, I wrote it during the COVID quarantine, when everything was postponed, canceled, or just disappeared. So I said, well, what am I going to do with my time? I'll write a book. And I wrote They Called Us Enemy. And thank you very much for not only making it a bestseller, but also protected by your principle and your integrity, speaking up when speaking up needs to be done. And that's still happening to many, many books that need to be read and understood. And there are people that are very frankly racist that are trying to get those books banned. And that's the other reason why I'm so proud of my association with Star Trek. Because Star Trek has that phrase, infinite diversity in infinite combinations. And may you all live long and prosper. And I feel very much that I have lived long. Next month, on the 20th, I'll be celebrating my 87th birthday. I think 87 is a long time. I've seen Star Trek fans when they were very young preteens coming to conventions. I see those same fans still coming to conventions with hair like mine or no hair at all. And so we have lived long and prospered. When you live long, you live through the many stages of life. And I feel blessed in having had so many wonderful experiences, enjoyed so many wonderful people and their generosity and friendship, enjoyed wonderful dishes, and some not so wonderful. I just wolfed down some food in the dining room here, and I know it was put together by the committee members with a lot of love and a lot of work, and I appreciate that. But when you have only 3 seconds to eat it and you have to wolf it down, it's not quite as delicious as it could have been. But I finished the book during that quarantine, and I still had more time around, so I wrote 2 books. The first one that I wrote is going to be published next month, my birth month. My birthday is April 20th, but on April 16th, I wrote a children's picture book version of my childhood imprisonment. The graphic memoir is titled "They Called Us Enemy," but it's a softer title with a children's picture book, "My Lost Freedom." And with this book, with "They Called Us Enemy," I wanted to reach the teenage readership, because I went through the imprisonment as a 5-year-old child, 6, 7, 8, and 8.5 when they released us. And so I remember the horror and the constant being moved about with armed soldiers as guides, but I only remember that part, the scary part, the boring part, and my parents' anxiety. I wanted to understand it as a teenager. And as a teenager, I tried to find more information about it at public libraries and could find nothing. But my father was a block manager. My father spoke both Japanese and English fluently, and he was able to communicate with the immigrant generation people as well as the American-born people. And so as a block manager, he had to represent the people of our block with the camp administration. And he knew some of the difficulties, challenges of negotiating with the authorities in camp. But he also knew the struggles and conflicts within the bloc itself. Some people became very radicalized and angry. Others became depressed, everything taken from them and unjustly imprisoned. We had absolutely nothing to do with Pearl Harbor. We're Americans, and yet they categorize us as enemy alien. We were neither. And so that was the title. They called us enemy. targeting the teenage generation because I wanted young people to know about that. And sure enough, that got banned in York, Pennsylvania when the book first came out. But I thought I wanted to reach more people and maybe reach 2 generations with one book. So I decided I'm going to make that a children's picture book. And I got a wonderful artist named Michelle Lee to illustrate a child's eye view. Those experiences as seen from the eyes of my 5-year-old me, or 6 or 7 or 8. And that book is going to be called My Lost Freedom, and that's on the front cover. We found a shaggy stray dog behind the kitchen of the mess hall. Looked very hungry, and so we begged for a little morsel of food from the cooks, and then that wasn't enough, so we went back to our parent and asked our mother if she had some cookies that we could give to the dog, and she did, and the dog became ours, and we that dog is on the cover with me. He was a shaggy, kind of grimy-looking stray dog. So we called him Blackie. He was all black, except 2 brown. We called it peanut butter dots over his eyes. And so the cover has me with the dog. And that book is coming out on the 16th, My Lost Freedom, targeting both the daddy and mommy generation. We're going to be reading to little Johnny and little Jamie. So get the story exposed to daddy and mommy, and maybe whet their curiosity so that they'll go out and get more information on it. And then let the kiddies be introduced to that chapter of American history for the first time, but maybe they'll talk about it with their friends, and we'll have the future of America informed on this chapter of American history when this terror swept through the country, and the government got swept up in that. They came down with a curfew on all Japanese Americans throughout the country. We had to be home by 8 p.m. at night and stay home until 6 a.m. And if you were ever caught out at night, you were arrested and thrown into jail for the night. And so it was that kind of, and then President Franklin Delano Roosevelt on February 19, 1942, signed the Executive Order 9066, which ordered all Japanese Americans on the West Coast to be summarily rounded up and imprisoned in 10 barbed wire prison camps, barbed wire fences, sentry towers, armed soldiers. At night, when I made the night runs from my barrack to the latrine, searchlights followed me, as if we were criminals. There was no charge, and therefore no trial. In our justice system, when you're when you're arrested, you have the right to know what the charges are, and then you have the right to challenge those charges in a court of law, where those accusing you have to produce the facts and the evidence for whatever they're going to call us. In our case, there was none of that. Okay. Now, Brad appears. I'm reminded that I have 20 minutes, so I should put my
Life story.
What?
Life story.
Life story, beginning with my 5-year-old me. So I'll quit and I'll open it up to a discussion, comments or questions that you might have. And I see the mic here.
Same religious symbol as you do.
Live long and prosper.
Listen to your speech was worth coming out here.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're a great company. I think Anne Frank got banned for the same reason you did, so you're a good company. But my question is really not a question, but can you tell us a really funny story of something that happened on the set of Star Trek where somebody screwed up or something got broken or didn't work right, something on Star Trek where...
This is a Star Trek convention, isn't it?
William Shatner drove a forklift through the, on the moon and it hit somebody and, the clock's ears fell off or something like that. I appreciate your story. Just listen to your story because, I don't want to get politically involved because I got my daughter out there and we started talking. She's going to tell me to shut up.
She should not. Come back in here. We learn from discussion, and that's how we become more informed people. The problem that we're having in America right now is that people are acting. Briefly, I'll go back to after the war, and when I became an adult and knowledgeable about the imprisonment, we lobbied Congress to create, actually we lobbied them for an apology and reparations because my parents lost everything and their lives were taken from them. And so we began lobbying for that. Congress created a congressional commission, and in 1981, I testified before that commission, and in that testimony, I talked about how I quoted from Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. He said, "Our government is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people." And I said, those are noble ideals, and that's what makes our democracy good. But therein lies also the weakness of our democracy, because together with those noble ideals, government of the people, by the people, and for the people, comes a citizen's responsibility. This is a participatory democracy, and we have to participate in democracy. And when we don't, we get into trouble. And I said, President Roosevelt in the 1930s was a great president because he had a way of galvanizing people. 1930s was when we were inflicted by a deep economic depression, and people were jobless, homeless, hungry, lining up in lines that went on a mile for a bowl of soup. The spirit of America was broken, but Roosevelt said to them, "You have nothing to fear but fear itself." And with that, he roused the country and brought the economy back up. But when Pearl Harbor was bombed, this great president became fearful because he realized that the entire west coast of the United States was just like Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. It was open, unprotected, and vulnerable. And living on the west coast were people that looked just like the people that bombed Pearl Harbor. People like me, Japanese Americans of Japanese ancestry. And so he signed that executive order that ordered all of us to be rounded up at gunpoint and imprisoned in barbed wire fences. I said to the commission, this can happen because Americans didn't work on their risk. Americans did. There were good people that spoke up. One of my heroes is a lawyer with the American Civil Liberties Union who defended Japanese Americans and challenged the imprisonment order all the way to the Supreme Court. And in 1944, in the middle of the war, the Supreme Court ruled against Wayne Collins, the attorney who represented Japanese Americans on that. So there were good people, but he acted, he spoke out, and he, being an attorney, he carried it up to the Supreme Court. But most people were intimidated by the president, and they didn't speak up. And the commission, and I testified at that commission, and in 1984, they produced a report that said what caused the imprisonment of innocent Japanese Americans into prison camps were 3 factors. 1, war hysteria. 2, race prejudice. And 3, the failure of political leadership. Essentially, people like Roosevelt. And so because of that, and that report went to the White House, and in 1988, President Ronald Reagan, on behalf of the United States of America and our democracy, formally apologized for that unjust imprisonment and signed the Civil Liberties Act, which authorized the payment of $20,000 for every survivor of the imprisonment that was alive at the point of the signing of the bill in 1988. And my father had passed in '79, so he died without ever knowing that there was going to be that apology. But my mother said, Daddy always knew that this day would be coming. And so the important lesson to be learned from our imprisonment is that our democracy can be fallible, can make mistakes, and it makes it that much more important for citizens to act responsibly and speak out. And so when your daughter speaks out, don't you shut her up. I'm with her. I'm right. What about $20,000? I can't hear you.
Is that an insult?
What? It was a symbolic payment, yeah. What was lost was really hundreds of thousands of dollars, some people millions of dollars, as farmers that were successful. But that's the lesson of this chapter of American history that I'm writing about, that we as citizens have a responsibility, and we have a citizen's duty to speak out when something that's against our Constitution and our democratic ideals are being shunted. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. So, first thing, you have given my family a thing to bond around. We have been watching Star Trek as a family for decades, and I could not be more grateful. What was your favorite part or favorite episode that you filmed of the original series?
Well, that's a popular question, and I've answered it many times. From the series, the favorite episode that I have is the one where I got liberated from that damn console. And here I was, every episode, with that console on my lap, and saying, aye, sir, warp 3. The only nuance change was, aye, sir, warp 4. So that from the TV series, it's that episode where I ripped my shirt off and got my fencing foil and the But from the movies, I'm an activist for social issues, but also for my career. And I was always lobbying Gene Roddenberry to recognize the advances for the crew of the Enterprise. I mean, the Starfleet is supposed to be a meritocracy. People who get better are promoted. And yes, we got titles that were promotions, like Lieutenant Commander and then maybe Commander. But there I am, same old concepts like I serve Warp 5. And so I was always lobbying Gene Roddenberry or the writing staff for a promotion for Sulu. And we almost got there with Star Trek 2, The Search for Spock. But when you read my first book, To the Stars, you'll know why I didn't get my captaincy. But it took 5 more movies, Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, when the first scene is that new Excelsior ship, bigger, faster, and more powerful than the Enterprise, and a brand new captain in the captain's seat, calmly and confidently sipping at his cup of hot green tea, lots of antioxidant. And then Praxis explodes, and there's waves coming through the galaxy, and I shout, "Shields, shields!" And the battle begins. At the climax, when the aging captain of the Enterprise is about to be blown away by the Klingons, who comes to the rescue out of the darkened galaxy? Captain Sulu of the Excelsior. And he says, "Target that explosion and fire," and blows the Klingons to smithereens. And then now the classic ending of all Star Treks is on the bridge of the Enterprise. And seated at his captain's seat, Captain Kirk looks up at the view screen, this giant image of Captain Sulu. And he essentially says, "Thank you for saving my ass." And Sulu looks down and says, "Nice to see you in action one more time." And zooms off, and watching that are Doc McCoy and Engineer Scotty. And McCoy's just awestruck, and he says, "That is a big ship." But Scotty, with a twinkle in his eye, says, "Aye, but not so big as her captain, I think." That's a Captain Sulu movie. And I think that's the best Star Trek feature film of them all.